What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Lukas and Bush back again to go over the running back position. Last week we did the quarterbacks on Monday and on Wednesday. We went through and talked about quarterback free agency, quarterback draft, all the landing spots that all these guys could potentially go to, some trade targets out there as well. This week we're going through running backs, and a little bit differently than the quarterback position, we're just going to be talking primarily about free agency. This time, we're going to go through each team's cap situation, their landing spots, who they have as free agents, all that kind of stuff. And we're going to go through and basically say, are they going to go out and sign one of these free agents that we're going to talk about in a second, or are they going to choose to add a running back via the draft? So, Lukas, how you doing?
I'm doing good. We missed the prediction on Dwayne Haskins to overtake Big Ben's spot next year, but we'll see if we can be more accurate on this one.
I mean, the premise was right, though. We said Ben's going to come back and Dwayne Haskins or Ryan Fitzpatrick or James Winston or a lower-priced free agent is going to come in as a contingency plan because we knew they sure as shit couldn't roll with Mason Rudolph as their backup anymore. Yeah. So we're going to hit the intro, and then we're going to get right into this. Okay, so as I mentioned, the running back free agency preview is basically what this is going to be. And I'd encourage you guys right now to go down, hit the like button, pause the video. It helps us out tremendously. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Comment any of your thoughts, any predictions, any trade questions you have, any Dynasty information, some thoughts that you have for potential videos that we could do. Anything you want, just say hello to us down below in the comment section. All helps us out tremendously. So the unrestricted free agents and the restricted free agents running backs will be on the screen right now. It's a pretty good crop of free agents that we have this year, a lot better than usual. These guys are all they bring something different to the table. So I sorted the unrestricted free agents by starters / fringe starters or competition for starting jobs and kind of backups and what would become handcuffs for fantasy purposes. Into the AFC North, we're going to go through basically team by team, talk about the running back state of the team, who's free agent, who's currently under contract, whether they're going to add someone, and then at the end, we're going to give a verdict. Basically, are they going to add someone in free agency? Are they going to opt to go through the draft based on a number of factors? So Pittsburgh, they currently have Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland, and Jalen Samuels under contract. And Jalen Samuels, based on the structure of his contract, is probably a cap casualty based on their current cap situation. They are currently negative $28 million in cap space, and they have a number of notable free agents, as we talked about on the quarterback show. So their current free agent at running back is their starter is James Conner. The Steelers have to improve in this area, basically, is what you can take away from this season. Our prediction in the quarterback video came true, as we talked about earlier. The Steelers did add a contingency plan at quarterback in Dwayne Haskins, which leads me to believe that Ben Roethlisberger is going to be back for one final shot at a Super Bowl ring or a playoff run, whatever you want to call it. The Steelers have to run the ball better. They rank dead last in rushing yards in the NFL and in yards per carry. And amongst the NFL's offensive lines, they rank second to last in run blocking according to PFF. So overall, this is a passing team. As of right now, as of last year, as of most of Ben's career, but they have to improve in this area.
Yeah, I think that we kind of dissected it pretty well in the quarterback episode of how they have two different ways to approach the salary cap in the draft this year. Obviously, they got their backup, which, I don't know what his it's nothing more than $3 million, maybe. I don't really know.
Not very expensive.
And we mentioned a lot of the turnover in they're going to need to sign back. I think it was 2 edge rushers, a corner, an O-lineman. The O-linemen are old. They're kind of in a really shitty spot for cap space and team building. They are actually projected to be 6th in cap space next year. So I think that's the route they're going to take. I don't know if they're going to actually go in and draft a running back personally, because I think they're going to try and draft O-lineman, corners. They're going to try and build this team first and then insert a running back next year because they're going to have a lot of cap space to kind of counteract that. But on the flip side, they could just draft someone this year, maybe sign another
running back is definitely more likely to pay big dividends his rookie season than an offensive lineman might be, or than a corner might be, or something like that. So I think if you're going for broke trying to win a championship, I think Ben is going to be in ownership's ear being like, hey, I need a running game. I need a running game. I need a running game. So there is a good chance that they do draft a running back. Ben can't single-handedly carry this offense anymore. They need to add someone, whether in free agency or in the draft. You cannot look your fans in the eyes or your quarterback in the eyes and be like, yeah, Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland, and Jalen Samuels are your opening day running backs. Like, you just can't do it. They're not good enough. It's basically the entire point of this. Even if you add offensive line help, I don't think that those guys are good enough to carry this offense from a ground perspective.
No, yeah, I totally agree. And I think whether that comes from the draft or, I mean, to be honest, I think like a Kenyon Drake or a Leonard Fournette would do just as good right away. I'm then trying to draft someone pending how early they want to draft a running back. I don't know if you mentioned the picks. They have picks 24, 56, and 87. So, I mean, they're in a prime spot to really control the market, at least from what I kind of think is going to happen.
The tier breaks are kind of in their favor, too, because 24, you figure, is about where Travis Etienne and Najee Harris's names start coming up in draft box. 57, I don't know, that might be a bit too late for Javonte Williams, but that second tier of running backs, Javonte Williams, Trey Sermon, Kenneth Gainwell, all the, like, whoever you like just answer the question yourself. But basically, those tier breaks is exactly where the Steelers sit in the draft. And as we mentioned, negative $28 million in cap space. I don't know if they're going to want to go break the bank for Chris Carson, who I think is going to command a lot of money. Chris Carson is a great fit. Like, I think Chris Carson would be a great fit. I think he'd help this offense tremendously, but I don't think they can afford him, especially with Bud Dupree being a free agent, Cam Sutton being a free agent, Matt Filer, the right tackle, being a free agent. It's just not feasible from a financial perspective. So our verdict, basically, what we think is going to happen, what we think they should do, is you let James Conner walk in free agency because he's really nothing special. And if you bring him back, it's only for a very cheap amount of money. And replace him in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft, whether it's Najee Harris, Javonte Williams. Both are very good fits, I think. Etienne, not so much as good of a fit, but I think they're more of like a physical running back type of team. So Najee Harris and Javonte Williams especially make a lot of sense to me.
No, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it makes the most money sense to snag one of these guys. And I think if they draft a first-round running back, I believe they get a 5th-year option. I don't know if it's that late in the draft. So it'd be the perfect sort of money move, you could say, to slowly rebuild this team with the projected high cap space come next year's free agency.
Yeah, exactly. And I think from a team-building perspective, you're trying to win right now. If you draft Najee Harris at 24, it's a big upgrade to your offense. It's a thing that can pay dividends in his rookie season. So that makes a lot of sense. They have all the cap space to worry about their offensive line and corner and all that kind of stuff in 2 years from now when Ben is retired. So that's what we think of the Steelers. Baltimore Ravens. This one will probably be less of a conversation because it's pretty cut and dry to me. You have currently under contract J.K. Dobbins and Justice Hill. You recently cut Mark Ingram, I believe, a couple days ago. And restricted free agents. You have no unrestricted free agents at the running back position of note. Restricted free agents is Gus Edwards, who I believe was your second or first leading rusher this season. I think it's very simple. You bring back Gus Edwards on a 2nd-round tender, 3rd-round tender, whatever you think you can get him for. And then you have a talented and productive running back tandem with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards from last year, who had one of the best rushing offenses in the league to complement your quarterback. And you still have Justice Hill as a 3rd running back, and maybe you even add a depth piece or a day 3 running back in the draft to kind of round out this running back core. So this one, very cut and dry from a dynasty perspective. If you're looking at this, I think J.K. Dobbins is the feature back, and Gus Edwards is very much involved. It's not going away if he is retained.
No, yeah, I totally agree. And I think this is exactly what they will do. And I think this provides – I mean, Dobbins is going to be a great dynasty running back pick, great fantasy pick next year. And Edwards is going to be just as good of a pick relative to where he's going to be going in drafts. And honestly, people are going to forget about him because they're going to hype up that Dobbins is going to be I guess you could say workhorse, but there's not a workhorse on this team, and it doesn't need to be a workhorse on this team. And I think Edwards will have standalone value and obviously huge handcuff value going forward, and they're both good too. Like, I mean, this is going to be very, very good.
J.K. Dobbins. I still like J.K. Dobbins for next year too. I just think people underestimate the power of this rushing offense. The fact that 2 running backs can come out of this. Gus Edwards could very well finish as a low-end RB2 next year, and I wouldn't be shocked.
No, for sure. And I mean, they'll probably lead the league in rushing attempts, I would imagine, unless something crazy happens to their scheme. So I think they definitely I know I got Edwards super late in a startup we're doing right now, and it felt like a steal. I think it was around 15 or 16.
Just a tremendous best ball pick for next year, too.
Yeah, no,
Never know
totally.
when he's going to fall into the end zone twice. Okay, so to finish out this division, we have the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals. We're not going to spend very much time on those guys at all because their situations are very clear. Kareem Hunt's under contract next year. Nick Chubb's still on his rookie deal. Those guys, they're going to be the running back tandem and the best running back tandem in the league next year for that team. Cincinnati has Joe Mixon under contract, a big contract, I might add. And Gio Bernard is still under contract as well. So those guys, again, run it back with those two. Maybe you add a depth piece to replace Gio Bernard at some point, but you have Travion Williams on the roster. I think Rodney Anderson's still there. Who the hell knows? But from a dynasty perspective, it's very cut and dry from those two teams to the NFC East. And there's a lot more running back questions in this division than there was in the AFC North. Sorry, not the NFC. The New England Patriots. Currently, they have under contract Sony Michel, Damian Harris, and J.J. Taylor, who I think you were a big fan of coming into the draft last year, and I was as well, especially for the Patriots and what they do. And then the free agency guys that they have, unrestricted free agents, Rex Burkhead and James White, who were big-time contributors for them this year and in past years. I think people really, really underestimate the impact that these two free agents could have on Damian Harris's value should they both leave in free agency. And I think for sure one of these guys will leave, if not both of them. And as a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan and watching all my running backs drop passes constantly, I would love to see James White in Tampa Bay if Keyshawn Vaughn or whoever else is on the roster is not ready to take over that role. So what are your thoughts kind of on the Patriots backfield? It's always been a talking point that this is a huge conundrum and we can never figure it out. I actually think they have very, very specific roles in mind. They have one primary ball carrier, one kind of do-it-all Rex Burkhead, Dion Lewis type, and then they have a pass catcher in James White. So I think they currently have that with the three guys they have under contract. Sony Michel being the Rex Burkhead type, Damian Harris being the feature ball carrier, and J.J. Taylor hopefully being able to take over James White's role. But I wouldn't be surprised if they brought one of these two guys back if J.J. Taylor isn't ready or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I think they really – because obviously there's been the whole who's the starter, who to draft the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I would say, in New England. I think they really figured it out last year, as much as it might not seem like they did. Because Burkhead, obviously he was injured, but he was a healthy scratch so many games just because they didn't need him. And the team was really hurting in many other fields too, that they needed that roster spot. And he kind of stopped playing special teams because they had like Oshevsky, that receiver. J.J. Taylor played some special teams. Like they kind of found their replacements. So I think Burkhead's gone. I think White, the Bucks. I mean, that makes complete sense.
It makes total sense.
Yeah, run it back with Brady, cut Shady, cut Fournette. Just go Rojo, Keyshawn Vaughn.
They're both free agents. You don't even need to cut them.
Yeah, not cut them. Just don't sign them back. So I think that they're both gone, and I think not because they're going to demand a lot in the market. I think the Patriots just realized they don't need him anymore. Harris is a good value. Honestly, Sony's kind of a value in dynasty leagues right now too, because he kind of actually looked good at the end of the year.
He's absolutely free right now.
And then I don't know if J.J. Taylor is much of like a go draft him or go try and get him, because they used him a lot at the beginning of the year and he looked really, really good in this offense. And then they stopped using him. Maybe it was because Damian Harris was kind of fully healthy. I'm not really for sure. So I think they're just going to run back these three. They're sitting 4th in cap space, and I think they're just going to load up everywhere else but running back for once in Bill Belichick's tenure. So I think if you're getting Damian Harris, I don't even know what his ADP is, probably 9th round in Superflex. Sony's probably 14th round. Like, take them both because they could easily both get 15 carries. I don't know, like 10 carries a game. Maybe Harris gets 18, Sony gets like 12 going forward.
Yeah. I think especially in dynasty leagues, these are people talk about upside in dynasty leagues, right? Like, I want to line my bench with upside players in dynasty and redraft. But especially in dynasty, when you have guys going out, like we saw this year, when you had Saquon going out and Mostert going out and Eckler going out, like a bunch of running backs just dropping like flies. Sometimes it's nice to have a Sony Michel on your roster. Sometimes it's nice to have a Gus Edwards on your roster that you can throw into your lineup. And you can provide especially if you play in a dynasty league that has like 4 or 5 flex spots or something like that. That's exactly the type of pick that you want to make because these guys are going to get volume and all that kind of stuff. I think whatever this team does is very telling. I don't think the Patriots drafting someone given their draft capital is really too likely. Like I think they have guys on the roster, as we mentioned, that can carry the load, and they have other needs and they have a lot of available cap space to address those needs. Their style is to add a free agent to this mix or retain one of their current ones, basically, is what I think they're going to do. And the verdict that we have for them is that they signed Dion Lewis, who is also a free agent. he's going to be next to nothing coming off of a pretty useless season in New York. You involve J.J. Taylor more in the passing game. You have Dion Lewis as kind of insurance policy if J.J. Taylor doesn't get it. Damian Harris is the primary ball carrier. Michelle spells Damian Harris. That's basically how they do it. That's how the Patriots have always done it. And I think, honestly, of all the predictions that we're going to make in running back episodes, I think this is probably the one that's most accurate.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. They're pretty easy to forecast.
They're also pretty easy for DFS purposes, I've noticed, too. If a team has a bad run defense, they run the ball. Shocking, I know. It's very smart of Bill Belichick to follow the art of war by Sun Tzu and attack weaknesses and exploit strengths or whatever the heck the quote is. But that's what he does. If a team has a bad run defense, he's going to run Damian Harris into the ground. That's just how it's going to work. Yeah. Anyway, so let's go to the New York Jets. This is a team that probably has the worst running back core in the league, if I had to say. Currently under contract, they have LaMichael Pirine and Ty Johnson, two guys that need to be only depth pieces and not starters or of any kind. Free agents, they have the eternal one, Frank Gore, set to probably leave the building and go wherever Adam Gase goes. Yeah. This is the worst running back core in the league, basically, is what we're getting at. They have high draft capital. They have pick 2 in the draft. They have pick 23 in the draft. They have pick 34 in the draft, high second-round pick, pick 66, high third-round pick, pick 86, mid-third-round pick, and they have pick 106, which is a high fourth-rounder. So they have a lot of ammunition, and they have $65 million in cap space to do something about it at this position. I do believe they will address this position, whether they keep Sam Darnold, whether they add Trey Lance or Justin Fields or Zach Wilson at pick number 2. Whoever your quarterback is, you have to surround them with talent, and that includes a run game. So I actually think they do multiple things. I think they explore both avenues. They add a free agent and they draft someone. To what degree do they do both of those things? Maybe they add a high-priced free agent like Aaron Jones and they draft someone on day 3, or they could go the opposite route and draft someone at 23 where they pick with the Seahawks pick and they add a low-priced free agent. I think ultimately, though, the team building philosophy deems that you don't pay running backs, right? And I think Joe Douglas is a smart GM. I don't think he's going to go out and sign Aaron Jones because they saw that worked out with Le'Veon Bell. It just doesn't usually work out when you bring a high-priced free agent running back to a bad team. I think what they do, given the coaches that they brought in Robert Saleh and Mike LaFleur. Both of them came from San Francisco. 3 running backs from San Francisco are free agents this year. Tevin Coleman, Jerick McKinnon, and Jeff Wilson. I think they bring in one of those dudes, whoever it is, due to Saleh being the coach, and you draft a high-end prospect. You have pick 23 and 34 prime running back spots. You bring in a Travis Etienne. You bring in a Najee Harris. You bring in a Javonte Williams. One of these dudes needs to be in your draft, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think just like a good tip for people is don't be surprised when they don't go against your fantasy draft or they don't draft like your Madden team would, because I think people are going to be shocked how smart Saleh is and how slow they take this rebuild, because they
could go the Dolphins route. Yeah, you're correct about that. They could go the Dolphins route and not draft a single running back like Miami did last year.
Yeah, so they're in the same spot Miami is, where everyone thought they have draft capital. They're going to take Jonathan Taylor and give him 100 carries, or not, that's even less, like 150 plus carries, like it's nothing in his rookie year. And I could see that, but I don't like because their O-line is, I mean, if they take Sewell, like we stated last week, if they have Sewell, McGovern, and Becton with their fill-in right guard and left guard, like they're going to be pretty good in the run game department, where they're not going to need, like you're not going to need an ETN, which would obviously help over a guy like Jeff Wilson, for example, if your O-line is good. That's where this don't pay running backs come from. The theory comes about is because if your O-line's good enough, you're going to be able to run the ball with any running back. And I think the Jets see that, because, I mean, when their 2 wins, like Frank Gore was rolling. They were giving him like 16 carries a game for like 80 yards, and he was working. So I think this one is like, I don't really like to make predictions because there's not really a clear-cut answer.
You're hoping about certain situations happening, and then you go like, oh, like I'm going to overvalue this Denzel Mims because he's going to have a high-priced running back coming in to take the pressure off of him. Like, no, there's a chance that doesn't happen. And I think what Robert Saleh said in his opening press conference was very telling with their plans on the future, because I think it's exactly the right thing to say. They said, hey, are you going to retain Sam Darnold? And instead of being a yes man and saying, oh, yes, we'd love to work with Sam like Cliff Kingsbury did with Josh Rosen, he said, we're going to evaluate Sam Darnold, his fit for our offense, and then we're going to determine if we're going to draft a quarterback at 2, basically, or if we're going to roll with Sam Darnold, which we said last week, Sam Darnold's a great fit for this offense, and if Robert Saleh sees that, Mike LaFleur sees that, then they might roll with Sam Darnold. But let's just say they go against what we think they should do, and they take Zach Wilson at number 2 overall. You still have number 23 overall to draft an offensive tackle, which this is a good offensive tackle class with good depth around that range of the draft as well. And you still have pick 34 to add a receiver, a running back, all that kind of stuff. Either way they do it, I think they add a running back personally. I know we get caught in this trap all the time about, they're going to add a first-round running back, but I do think the Jets actually do it this season. I don't think this is just wishful thinking by the fantasy community. So I would go into dynasty drafts and all that kind of stuff with the assumption they're going to add someone of some value.
Yeah, I think Jeff Wilson comes back. I think the McKinnon, maybe Carlos Hyde combo, the McKinnon, Coleman, McKinnon, Najee Harris. I think a combo like that makes sense. So I think, I don't know, I just don't see I think the one thing is I don't see a ton of value right away in dynasty or redraft for whoever goes there, because we see this with Mixon every year, as people think because he's the workhorse on a bad team, it's going to work out. With Sanders this year was clearly bad team, not going to work out. And I think this will kind of if they get ETN at 23, say they go Sewell ETN, I still don't think we can draft him.
They're still not a top 12 offense. Even if Stanford is good, what is their ceiling? What the Chargers were this year, right?
So I don't know. I just think that I'll be a little lower on the market if a rookie does go here, just because I don't like buying into bad offenses. But dynasty, it makes sense. So I think just be cautious of this. I think we'll see a lot of what Saleh wants to do come free agency, come interviews, come whatever the case is, through whatever media is put out there. So I think it'll be hopefully a good thing if he builds the team the right way, and we could be talking ETN or something in this backfield.
Yeah, and I think even for redraft purposes, if you want to look at this, if they go out and they flood this offense, right, which is I think what they should do, if they go sign Joe Thuney and they sign Allen Robinson and they draft ETN and they draft a receiver and they draft an offensive lineman and give Sam Darnold every chance he needs to succeed, it's still going to take time. That's so many new pieces. Don't pretend ETN's a first-round redraft pick because they added to the offense and it's going to be good all of a sudden, because it could be good, but it probably won't happen in year 1. So from a dynasty perspective, if a running back does land here, he's probably more of a rebuilding pick than he is a win-now pick, just for the record. So Miami Dolphins, we kind of made reference to them a lot just now, but currently under contract, the Miami Dolphins have Myles Gaskin, who's shown propensity to actually be a functional running back, Salvin Ahmed, who's done the exact same thing, Patrick Laird, who's a capable pass catcher, and they have Lynn Bowden and Malcolm Perry, who are kind of do-it-all weapons that they can use as running backs as well. From free agency, they have Matt Breida and DeAndre Washington, 2 guys that didn't really work out in their system. This coaching staff basically proved that they can get the job done with anyone. They don't need a first-round running back. They don't need Jonathan Taylor. They don't need Aaron Jones, whoever you want them to have. They don't need them. So I don't think they're going to force a running back signing or a draft pick by any means. I tweeted this out back in November, just for the record, though. I tweeted out Salvin Ahmed's usage when he was the workhorse running back in Miami. And basically what my point was, from a coaching perspective, they will literally give anyone a workhorse role, whether they've earned it, whether they've invested in them or not. Whoever's the best running back on their team, they're going to give a feature volume workload to. So from a dynasty perspective, that's very interesting, right? We want to know, if they do draft a running back in the second round, we know this guy's getting the ball. If they invest in a high-end free agent, we know this guy's getting the ball. If they invest in a high-end prospect, expect them to feature that player. They have picks 3, picks 18, pick 35, 50, 81, all in the top 100 of the NFL draft. They're in prime position to add a running back in the draft. $26 million in cap space as well. I don't think they invest personally in a free agent running back like Aaron Jones or like Chris Carson or anything like that. I think basically what I expect them to do is let whatever happens happen in the running back market. If they have a high grade on Najee Harris and he slips to pick, 35 in the draft, they pull the trigger then. But they're not going to pick a running back at 18 because it's their biggest need.
No, yeah, and I think we saw this last year with personally coming into this year. If they didn't take Jonathan Taylor last year in their second first-round pick, I don't think they're going to take one this year because,
exactly.
I mean, Jonathan Taylor is probably the best running back prospect of all time, off just a statistical and everything example, I guess you could give. So, I think we're going to see it again where Dolphins fans are going to beef it up, that they're going to take someone They're gonna imagine all these things that are gonna happen, et cetera. And I just they showed what the Jets need to do this year. They had a good run game with not really a good offensive line for as much offensive line picks they had. And like I think they're gonna re-go to the offensive line. They got to get a quarterback to some extent. They got to get receivers. They got to get defense. I mean, the defense is good, but they still need to build it there. Like they have more to build than just a running back. When honestly, Gaskin and Ahmed could literally do, could do it for next year. And then obviously Bowden, they used a decent amount towards the end of the year. So I think they're not going to get one of 3. I don't think they're going to get one of 18. 35 maybe, but I think a Javonte Williams, Sermon, Gainwell.
To me, that's where I see them going as well. That pick 50 right there, their second round pick, that to me screams Javonte Williams.
Yeah, but then there's still some drawback for me of why would they take him when they have Gaskin and Ahmed?
I mean, maybe my thought is teams stack their boards, right? For those of you who don't know how the NFL draft works, they stack their boards based on need and grade and film and combine and all that kind of stuff makes up their board. And if they deem a running back to be their third biggest need or something, fourth biggest need, which I think is fair, they could stack their board being okay, we have a first round tape grade on Harris and ETN. We have a second round tape grade on Javonte Williams. If we're at pick 50 and ETN's still on the board, we have to pick him. It's just similar to what the Ravens said about J.K. Dobbins. They said they had a first round grade on him and they couldn't pass on him, even though running back was not really a need for them. And it worked out for them because Dobbins was a valuable addition to their team. And that's what smart teams do. They draft based on their needs, but also how they stack their board based on their needs and the grades that they have on the players. Yeah,
just like the Cowboys drafted CeeDee Lamb to play corner for him.
Yeah, exactly. So the Buffalo Bills, the next team we got to talk about, and probably of all teams in the NFL, this is the team that everyone wants an elite running back to go to because unlike the Jets, this is an elite offense, right? This is an elite passing offense with a guy who's playing elite football at quarterback. I don't think they're gonna go out and sign Aaron Jones. I don't think they're gonna go draft Najee Harris. I don't think they're gonna go draft Travis Etienne. I think we're gonna be very much disappointed as a fantasy community by what the Buffalo Bills do at running back. You currently have Devin Singletary and Zach Moss under contracts going forward, neither of whom are very good in my opinion. You're right up against the cap, so Aaron Jones is probably not an option for you, even though a lot of people think that he should be going there. You're picking at the back half of each of the first 3 rounds, so yes, you are in range for at Najee Harris or an ETN. They could go that direction. We didn't think the Chiefs were going to go that direction last year, and they did end up going that direction because of the grade that they had on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. What are your kind of thoughts on who they might sign or what they might kind of do at the running back position in Buffalo?
I mean, if everyone for all fantasy players, we should want Leonard Fournette to go there. So then you don't have to draft him and he doesn't affect anyone else's draft stock or anything. I don't know. I mean, everyone's they have no run game. Well, I'm sorry, guys. They're in the AFC Championship. They don't freaking need one if they keep winning.
Their run game is better. Is their quarterback too?
That's the way. My theory is I'd rather run the ball with Josh Allen than Devin Singletary. I mean, so I think Zach Moss is I think he showed promise this year. Obviously, they didn't really get a huge run game going, but if Josh Allen actually was throwing deep balls and connecting, they're not going to stop him for what they thought he was. So I think it's Moss's backfield, long term in the next 3 years. But obviously, he had his injury. They said he should be back for camp. So I think that kind of pivots me to a Carlos Hyde, Chris Carson, Leonard Fournette signing. I don't know if Chris Carson's obviously
Chris Carson's the higher end, obviously, of those kinds of things, and probably Leonard Fournette's the middle tier, and then Carlos Hyde's the budget addition that you make. I think a middle tier signing makes a lot of sense to me. Especially we know Zach Moss got banged up in the playoff game that they played. If Zach Moss's health is in question, I think they're going to add somebody of some capacity, and I think a Phillip Lindsay, like you mentioned, a Leonard Fournette, someone like that makes a lot of sense. Just so that you have a good, all you need at this position is a rotation of capable starters. You don't need an elite prospect or an elite option at this position because you don't want to take the ball to Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and whoever else's hands. I'd much rather see them add a receiver in the draft. If they're just go all out on the passing game, screw it.
Yeah, and I think they will. I think they can't cut Brown. They can cut Brown this year. Beasley's under one more year. They have Gabe Davis. I think they'll prioritize that and replacing some of their veterans on defense just to get some insurance going forward because they have a couple. Their front seven's kind of old in that sense. So I wouldn't expect anything huge in this backfield, like I said, honestly, you're praying for Fournette to go here so he's not handcuffing or 1B.
Don't ruin Ronald Jones again, Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, so like if you're a fantasy fan, just cheer for Leonard Fournette to go to this team or something else, some other team like this.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So every team in the AFC East has a running back question. We just went through all those. Again, if you guys haven't already done so, please like the video, comment down below, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Join the Discord below. We're going to be running a lot of fan engagement, mock drafts, and rookie drafts, and all that kind of stuff. We post a lot of stuff in there. The Jacksonville Jaguars in the AFC South. We're going to run through actually not the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll start with the Colts and Titans just because they have absolutely no questions at their running back position. The Colts have Jonathan Taylor on his rookie contract, Nyheim Hines on his rookie contract. They're going to run it back with those two. Derrick Henry has the highest paid contract in the league, I believe, of any running back, so he's going to be the starter. They have Darrington Evans and Jeremy McNichols to complement him. So those two backfields are set in stone. We're actually going to go Houston Texans first. Currently under contract, they have David Johnson and Duke Johnson. Two DJs that aren't very good at football, basically. Both guys can be cut and free up $15 million total in cap space with only a dead cap of like $1.5 million. If I were the Houston Texans, and this is all kind of hinging on the fact that what they do with Deshaun Watson, right? Because if you're in rebuild mode and you trade Deshaun Watson, cut these running backs, get them out of the building. Like you need the cap space, just tank this season, get some better draft capital next year, all that kind of stuff. So cutting bait makes sense if you trade Deshaun Watson. You currently have negative $17 million in cap space, so you need to free up space regardless, even if you trade Watson. So they're in really a weird situation from the run game perspective. I think we would both agree it's not nearly anywhere close to their biggest concern right now because they have a terrible front seven. They have a terrible linebacking core. They have a terrible secondary. Their receiver core has questions with free agency. Their interior offensive line is bad. They have a quarterback question. Running back is not very high on their list of priorities.
Yeah, and I think like people are going to mock draft running backs here without looking at cap space. David Johnson was good in his final like 3-4 games. Like when I say good, I'm talking like above average running back. They used him in the passing game. They used him how he should have been. Obviously, he got hurt because in the first couple of weeks he was pretty decent as well. So yeah, I think this will come down to complete who the coach is in the sense of like. I guess I don't really know. I want to give examples because, like, I think if Bieniemy's there, I think he's going to try his best to keep Watson. But I think if it's another coach, Watson's gone. So to me, if Watson stays, they're going to run back David Johnson, maybe get someone else because there'd be no point.
He's probably gone regardless, I think, because he has zero dead cap and he isn't good. So.
Yeah. So I think just like look at who the coach is. Obviously, if Watson's gone, they're probably going to cut both these guys. I think Phillip Lindsay's a good running back because it sounds like the Broncos aren't going to match any offer that he's given. You could give him a $2 million, $3 million a year contract. He'd take it. He'd be a workhorse, not a workhorse, but he'd be the main back instantly there. He wouldn't care if it's a bad team or not. So I guess I don't really know if David Johnson, like buy David Johnson maybe, or just kind of wait and see because there's a lot I think they're the last team without a head coach, if I remember right. Obviously, the quarterback situation's up in the air. Their cap's up in the air. Who knows who's going to be on this team next year? So I think it's just more of a wait and see because this will get sorted out right around free agency time to some extent.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a situation where you just kind of don't want their running game. Like if whoever goes here, you don't want them because if Watson's gone, becomes a bad offense. And even if Watson is there, this becomes a pass-first offense. And unless they add a high-priced running back, which neither of us think is very likely to happen, then there's really no point of investing into this backfield. So I would just avoid this from a redraft perspective if David Johnson's there. Still, a dynasty perspective, if whoever rookie lands here, I don't think it's a very fruitful kind of situation. So on to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and this is a backfield I get a lot of hate about because I don't believe in James Robinson. And the reason it's not because I don't think James Robinson's talented. I do think he's talented. He ranked number 5 in evaded tackles this season. He's a fairly decent running back. I don't think he's a world beater or anything, but he's probably an above average starting running back in the league. My thing with James Robinson is that I think he was a product of the coaching staff, and he was a product of the fact that they were tanking and they didn't really want to invest in running back. So they had an undrafted free agent carry the ball 1 million times. They threw him the ball 1 million times. And if they get any better, which they have the draft capital and the cap space to do so along their entire roster, I think they prioritize other situations too. I'm not saying they're going to go out with their second first-round pick that they got from the Jalen Ramsey trade and draft Najee Harris. I don't think that's going to happen. But what I do think happens is they draft maybe 2 running backs on day 3. Maybe they sign a free agent running back, and they draft a running back in round 4. And the workload, which is what James Robinson was made by, the workload, not his talent, it goes down. Maybe James Robinson's still a 65% feature back, but James Robinson this year, his route participation, his routes run, his snap share, his opportunity share is 85.2% of that backfield, number 1 in the NFL. So I think regardless of what happens, their coaching tendencies, who they add, all that kind of stuff, that number can't keep up. And if it does, James Robinson might go to the Hall of Fame, honestly, because like that's the only outlier situation that happens.
Yeah, no, like the numbers off last year won't keep up. Like it was insane. Like I was betting over on his rushing attempts every single game. I mean, it makes sense because they were projected to be like 10-point underdogs every game. So the books aren't going to give him 20 plus rushing attempts. And his line was like 18, 19, 20 every single time. And they just kept feeding him because they were openly tanking.
They're trying to lose.
Yeah, they were openly tanking. They fell into the first pick. They fell into the best quarterback prospect possibly of all time. They fell into Urban Meyer, who brought in a coaching staff. They have the most cap space. So this decision, like no matter how good we think Robinson is, could be, will completely determine on what Urban Meyer wants to do. Like this is another one of the situations where, like if they're smart, you take Lawrence, you use your cap space elsewhere, you draft elsewhere, run James Robinson 1 more year. It's kind of like Philip Lindsay, undrafted free agent. He had a really good, well, obviously this was much better than Lindsay's first year, But
speaking on Philip Lindsay real quick, the reason I'm hesitant to believe in James Robinson is because of Philip Lindsay. We saw Philip Lindsay rush for 1,000 yards his rookie season as an undrafted free agent. We saw him make the Pro Bowl his rookie season as an undrafted free agent, which is exactly what James Robinson did this year. Mm-hmm. And they hired a new coaching staff the following year, and then Philip Lindsay was phased out. They used Royce Freeman more. They brought in Melvin Gordon, which is what I think is going to happen with James Robinson. I think honestly, at the time, you could have argued that Philip Lindsay was just as talented as James Robinson was this past year. I think everyone would have agreed.
It would be better, to be honest.
It might have even been better, yeah. So my issue is the investment side of things. They have no reason to give James Robinson a lot of work. Again, if you said, if they're smart, run this guy into the ground. He makes no money. But I don't think that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to want to bring in their own guys. And we actually have rumors that they're going to sign Darrell Bevell as their offensive coordinator. And that does help James Robinson because Darrell Bevell has been a guy that uses feature backs in the past. But we saw this past year in Detroit, they continued to use Adrian Peterson, even though DeAndre Swift was the better running back. They continued to use, I don't know, whoever else was there, Kerryon Johnson, even though DeAndre Swift was the best running back on that team. So just I would just caution anyone who thinks the 85% opportunity share is just a given next year and the offense gets better with Trevor Lawrence and all that kind of stuff, because that stuff is going to happen. The offense is going to get better, but it'll probably also take time because it's a new quarterback, a new system, a new coach, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I think like advice around this would be if they don't sign someone in free agency, then go out and buy James Robinson because they're not going to take a high-end running back round 1. I just don't think that's
no, it's not going to happen.
So I think like post free agency, like I could easily see Chris Carson, Aaron Jones going here. It makes sense. You give an experienced running back with coming in with Trevor Lawrence, experienced running back, experienced receiver core. They use the money towards O-line, draft capital towards O-line, defense. So I think post free agency would be like your momentum swing for Robinson to maybe I don't really know what his value is going for. Maybe he's worth a second round rookie pick or a late first post free agency because you're going to get a year maybe
two. Ranked inside their top 10 dynasty running backs.
Unless he's actually really really good and like we just don't know because the team was banged up and tanking. Like there's no way he's the running back next 2 years, not this upcoming year, next year.
Yeah, and again, if he is that and we're wrong about that, I'll admit it. I'll be like, yeah, James Robinson, I missed on. But the signs were telling me that this dude needs to be an absolute huge outlier to hit. And that is still true. I think that is still true. And yeah, he's been an outlier from a lot of perspectives, but guess what? So is Philip Lindsay. What is Philip Lindsay's dynasty value right now? Right?
Yeah, like nothing.
Lindsay actually, I think, makes a lot of sense as a compliment to James Robinson if they wanted to sign him.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. So, yeah, I think just post free agency, use free agency as your –
free agency is a big key, and I think the draft is less so of a key because I don't anticipate them drafting one early. I'll say this. If James Robinson, his only additions to his backfield were a 5th-round rookie or something like that, I'm not worried. I'll take him in the top 3 rounds of redraft leagues. and all that kind of stuff. And I'll admit I was wrong, but I think they're going to add to this backfield in free agency and in the draft. So just keep that in mind. On to the last division that we have here, the AFC West. There's 3 teams that don't really need any running backs in this, so we'll just briefly touch on them. The Los Angeles Chargers have a plethora of running backs, including Austin Eckler, who's on a big contract. They're not going to add probably anyone to this backfield because they have Josh Kelly and they have Justin Jackson to kind of complement Austin Eckler and all that kind of stuff. And then Kansas City has Damian Williams coming back from an opt-out prior to this season, and they have Clyde Edwards-Helaire on his rookie contract. Darrell Williams is a free agent. Le'Veon Bell is a free agent. Maybe they bring back one of those 2 guys potentially. But I don't think Kansas City adds too much to this backfield, if at all, because they have a lot invested as it is. And then the Raiders, they have Josh Jacobs on his rookie contract. They have a plethora of random pass-catching backs, some of whom are free agents, some of whom are not. I'd imagine they're going to kind of continue with that philosophy where they don't give Josh Jacobs just some feature workhorse role. They involve him in the passing game a bit, similar to someone like Nick Chubb, and then they give him the bulk of the carries. That kind of stuff is just how I see John Gruden and Mike Mayock going about it. But Denver, we talked about Philip Lindsay already. He is currently the free agent running back on the Denver Broncos. Currently under contract, they have Melvin Gordon and Royce Freeman. I mean, neither of whom are very, very good running backs. They're kind of they're just guys at this point in their careers. I think when you look at this team, they're not really a running team. Their offensive line is much better at pass blocking than they are run blocking. This landing spot isn't exactly a coveted one, especially with Melvin Gordon still there. He's going to get volume. He's going to see some kind of work. And I think this offense has so many moving parts that you can't trust it to be like a top 12 scoring unit. So it's not like one that, even if there is 2 running backs that are involved, you want to attach yourself to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think I just got Melvin Gordon in the 10th round of a super flex league. So the RB14 going in the 10th round with potentially, actually not potentially, probably more volume because he missed a game 2 going into next year. He's a huge value no matter who they add going forward. But I think there's a lot of positives coming with this team. You got year 2 of Shermer's offense. Sutton will be back, which will just make the offense flow better. Jawan James will be back, already adding to this really good offensive line that came out of nowhere. You're adding – I mean, I'm not going to say the best O-lineman.
Machine.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I think he could. He also had like the lowest percentage of catchable targets. Drew Lock and whoever else we had, Jeff Driscoll and Ripon. I don't know. So I think what we're trying to say is like go by Gordon and expect maybe a round 3 or 4 running back to this team. They had talks of getting a round 3 or 4 running back last year after signing Gordon and having Lindsay. It sounds like Lindsay's out the door.
To be honest, too.
Yeah, he could get cut. There's no way they bring back his 5th-year option, or he won't even have.
He was a 3rd-round pick. They're not going to do anything with him.
So I think there's a lot of opportunity in this backfield to find value because Melvin Gordon, I think, is a pretty good steal right now. He's only 27. He looked fine last year. The game he missed was when he had his DUI or whatever. Like his injury concerns are virtually out the door from prior in his career. So I think my advice would be just to go take Gordon and let it ride because the Broncos are sitting pretty average in cap space. They got to sign back Justin Simmons. They have decent draft capital, but nothing really like crazy to go get a running back besides round 3 or 4, which I don't see much value in taking Kenneth Gainwell over a Royce Freeman as your second back anyways, to be honest. I don't think the Broncos see that value because they don't run the ball that much anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, I think the buy low opportunity and the uptick in volume and productivity comes in the passing game of this team, right? Like,
yeah,
with the second year in the system for Pat Shurmur and all that kind of stuff, you're going to see the value rise for guys like Cortland Sutton, for guys like Jerry Jeudy, for guys like Noah Fant, for KJ Hamler, for any Drew Lock. Any piece that is in this passing game is more so what I'm willing to buy into in dynasty leagues and redraft leagues. So this running back core, it's just, Melvin Gordon's there. He's like fantasy oatmeal. He's going to get volume. He's going to probably produce. If you're a win now team in dynasty, he's definitely a good maybe trade target or a guy to take late in startups. But again, he doesn't get me excited either. So he's not a guy that I'm actively looking to go get, but I do think he's a solid piece that's going to be very, very undervalued. So the Broncos backfield's another one that's kind of a little up in the air. We'll see what they do in free agency or the draft. I could see them going in either direction to add someone because they do have some cap space to spend. But that's it. On Wednesday, we will have the NFC edition of this, hopefully with a lot more free agency talk in it, because a lot of these teams, their current backfields or the draft is the better place for them to go, but the NFC has a lot more potential free agency landing spots for these running backs. So stay tuned for that. That will be on Wednesday. As I said, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Discord in the description will get you access to that. It's totally free. You don't have to pay for it. It's not a subscription-based thing. So if you want to join the Discord and get connected with some like-minded fantasy players, some dynasty players, me and Danny are very active in there as well. So make sure you guys join that. We will be running a lot of fan engagement, mock drafts, and all that kind of stuff in there. So without further ado, guys, peace out. Enjoy your Monday.
Wire me the money.